considering she hasn't posted anything in 3 years, I might be wrong.
Well,
Animals that ask people
I'm
for help.
back.
Worst animal in the world. Ah, stop! Dad! Dad! Dad!
I am streaming.
Father! Father! Father!
Jesus, stop it. He knows what I'm talking to. And talking about. Excuse me. Mm-hmm.
Worst animal. Ooh, that's weird.
That was
What did it fall? Get off me.
hovering over you.
Monsters. Are we still alive now?
They're alive, just probably just very rare, like you guys.
Oh, that means it'd be really hard to. I'm gonna find one. Like, why do you want to play ice? I love it. I want it. Yes. Yes. Fine.
Would you need to have a fox as a pet? You're not exactly neat. Plus, that's a rare people that you have.
This is Phase Music.
Corset, long sleeve shirt with rolled up sleeves, choker, high heel boot, tight pants. think I got it.
This is VZ Music.
Welcome to the show.
Sound production.
They couldn't leave our field alone. He's got bone.
Sound production.
a business casual corset. There we go.
This is VZ Music.
How to draw wrinkles. How to draw wrinkles. Mark Burnett, line work. Pause.
Amazing looking folds from imagination in under 10 minutes. Keep watching and you'll see how much you improve right away. I'm serious. Let's get started.
All right, Mark Burnett. He used to work for Blizzard Entertainment. Now he does like online tutorials about different aspects of art, and he's self-motivated, self-taught, all that other type of stuff. But later on, he switched gears and went the traditional route because after having invested in his time and his skills. So, very good person to check out and to get pointers from. He's been in the industry and and is now going his own way. So, I can't say enough about this gentleman. There's a few other artists that I aspire to be as good as. So, like, again, better teachers than there are better teachers than me out there, and I freaking try to look for people that have good art that I basically look up to in a certain sense. And I know it's hard to look up at people at whatever age that you might be at, but you got to look at it from a professional standpoint. If somebody is better than you at a certain thing, it's okay to admit that, but it gives you a goal to aim towards, to overtake, and to take that future spot, because he won't stay there for the rest of his life. He'll either move out by moving up or not practice and go down in skill.
Might be getting more value than you realize. Here's why I say this. The types of folds that I'm about to show you are folds that you'll almost always have to draw for your characters. Like what? Like the folds around the crotch, the folds around the armpits, and the more simple folds you get around your joints when you bend your arms and your knees. These types of folds are folds that you'll be drawing 70-80% of the time when you draw folds. These are the vast majority of folds that you'll ever draw. I hope I'm not overselling. Now, on the contrary, what I'm not going to talk about are the more unique folds, the types that you'd only draw like 30%, 20% of the time, like capes, long dresses, towels. Most fold as a result of gravity, actually, and other stuff like that. I might in a future video, if there's any interest. Let me know in the comments, bro. I won't be talking about anything too in-depth here, though, so don't expect to walk away from this video understanding everything there is to know about folds. Only I understand everything. JK. No, but I was referring to the class I teach in art school on this topic for a reason, because it's an hours long class. There's a lot to cover when talking about logic and theory about folds, but we'll skip most of that today. What? Yeah, instead, you can expect to learn how to draw good, no, great looking folds that you'll be able to use and show off often. Away, let's go. So the first type we'll start with is the easiest. If you can pull this one off, the others should be more challenging, but definitely doable. If this is too much already, alright, let's get started. So the first type will be the knee arm band fold. Like, let's say your character is wearing long pants or a long sleeve shirt. So here, just to start, we have a very basic limb, more like a cylinder. It could be anything. And here we want to see what happens when you introduce a band in the volume. What happens to the fabric that's laying on top of it? On the outside, well, the fabric will just stretch a little bit. So as actual fabric, maybe this would look something like this. Now, this is super simple. It's like a logic here, and any variants of that. If the fabric was more baggy, for example, you might want to make those folds bigger. And then if the fabric is tighter, maybe a little bit less stiff, you'll get the same thing, but those same folds will be thinner as well. So in this case, we still get the same logic. We have our flat diamond and instead follow the direction of the volume more and more. Oh, and by the way, that diamond shape here is concave. Oh, and by the way, number 2, this is the kind of rhythm that you should be aiming for when it comes to folds. A high frequency of folds closer to the tension point, and then have that frequency kind of die off as you move away, as you release tension. Is in a perspective such as we see it from below, meaning that most of the folds will have a tendency to follow the same angle. We're going to start with our diamond shape here. Like I said, it's a tighter shirt, tighter fabric, so the folds are going to be smaller. The 2 hands, and then maybe some extra folds in here, smaller ones, and of course, always nicer if we adjust the silhouette along with it. Then quickly another points as usual, so good to identify those. So of course here at the top of the shoulder we're going to get a little bit of tension where the fabric is kind of just resting on it, and in the armpit where all the fabric is bunching up. And then just like the first example, I like to have 2 extra little arms. They're just not going to be placed the same way. We're going to have a big one, and will be right in the middle of the shoulder, right about there. So that's where those folds would appear, and then more distance between them. If it's a baggier shirt, same anatomy, you'll just want to stretch it a little bit more vertically, and also probably use fewer of them. Alright, so far so good. Let's move on to the final example, the last fold recipe that we're going to be looking at today. The folds in the crotchal area. Is that even how you say this? The folds around the crotch. In this case, we're going to have a few more, but it's still pretty simple, I think. So here we have probably the most obvious tension point at the pubis, and the other tension point is going to be the hips, or like the entire waist, and maybe the knees. And the way that the folds will arrange themselves will be kind of this X pattern. We'll get the deepest folds along the line where the leg bends at the hips, and then going down, those folds will be going towards the knees. Once again though, we're still going to get the diamond shape. I just have 2 lines here on either side of kind of like the main one, the main fold, because you could technically kind of pick any of these 2 and it would work going downward. Have an answer to a lot of the different situations you would encounter.
Alright. So how does that translate into what I'm trying to do? So they said to set up the tension point up here and the tension point where the rest of the folds are going to be, and have it and it's going to scrunch up a little bit more here, getting closer to that strap that's supposed to be right here, right? And die out a little bit as it goes out, but it'll start to slump off the shoulder a little bit. Okay, that's one. The next one is going to be, let me make that one smaller. The next one is going to be They said the crotch area. So, uh, and mm, mm, mm. But I want this to look like that it's walking forward. I'll work on that later. I can change that whole thing up, but this is the front of the detention area. That's going to be the back where everything's going to be. Using the logic that I just learned. All right. I know it's kind of boring and whatnot, and I didn't turn back on the music, but I had to look up the technique that I wanted to do. Just redrawing the character that I want to draw, or setting up the freaking character again so that I can draw it in a good way. One of the things that I wanted to do was make a corset that has like a shirt, has like a blouse and tie. I'm trying hard to make that little uh that detail work. So because that's going to be the look of this character. I think I'm gonna lose the choker and save it for save it for something a little bit more special. I think she has enough detail to stand on her own for the most part. I'm not sure how busty I want to make her, but this unnamed character seems to be pretty good so far. Just gonna hammer in some details that would be better to have, I guess. Shoot, I gotta position the head and face right. Uh, let's try 3/4, I guess. A 3/4 view female model. How to draw the female head. How to draw the female head. Well, let's start over again with her face. Then I saw her face. Then I'm a believer. Couldn't leave her if I tried. Eye types. Eye shape.
Here is information from Byju's.
Oh my god, you fucking idiot. Round almond. Roundish. Droopy. Thin almond. Let's go with thin almond. That already doesn't look right. We're gonna eyebrow shapes. Straight curves, soft arch, high arch, upward and sharp. So let's try high arch. Everything doesn't need to be perfect, but I do want it. I do want it represented on this sheet that I'm making. So what's probably going to happen is like a lot of micro adjustments to recreate the face exactly the way that I want it. So like what you see here is far away from a finished product. It's just a work in progress. However, I will say this. We are going to keep at this for a little bit. Because I know, like, because of my artistic tendencies, I tend to stress, like, strong cheekbones and stuff like that because, being ethnic. May I play that one game later? You're talking about Dead Cells? I might, depending on how far along I get with this. I'm not really satisfied with what's going on here. And I need to change. I need to change what I'm doing. Because I'm trying to make too many different angles when it's just really just an easy stroke and a simple line. But I'm not confident in calling it there. But what I can do. Oh yeah, yeah. It was freezing last night. That's normal. I want to. Fine. I merged the visible layers. Lasso. Copy. And paste. Now, I can enlarge this picture and make it transparent. And turn everything off underneath of it. Turn that off. Don't save it. And what I'm gonna do, make another layer, switch to brush, and draw on this layer, but this time taking the rough measurements because this was a real model of everything that I see. As a rough estimate of where everything is. And use those lines as a kind of a guideline. Where I want everything to be. It's going to be kind of sort of hard. Should have been using that first. I can erase the lines later. All right. So let's get dangerous. Oh, it's snapping. No. That's terrible. off a little bit. All right. Jeez, I butchered that, but we can recover. Now she had. And just going to mirror this somewhat. And ear, bottom of the ear. Probably doesn't stick out that much, but some of it does. And here we go. So which is better, psychic power or raw power? You mean which is more advantageous to have? I'm talking, yeah, I'm thinking that you mean telekinetics, like moving things with your mind versus Superman or Herculean type strength. Both have their, both abilities have their place. One would argue that you can't have one without the other. I mean, what good would be moving anything with your mind when you can't freaking move your body? Raw power or your own power? Hmm. An interesting concept. I say a little bit of both, to be honest with you. Because the power of your choices makes up for a lot of shortcomings that you may have. Hmm. You're going to need to be more descriptive with that power because you're not saying, like, what type of power, what can I do? It's just raw power is a vague term. A lot of things can have raw power. Even things not even doing anything, like a rock, has raw power. I wish you can get rid of these guidelines once you're done with them. I probably just need to go through the tutorial again. Copy. Image. Mode grayscale curves. Where is a horizontal flip? All right, got a horizontal flip. You motherfucker. You did the whole canvas. This does the whole canvas. What about layer? Merge, flatten, arrange, send forward, send backwards. Pattern. Green.
Oh, that's your value. They did it.
Hold on. Yeah, but it's going to flip the canvas. Damn it. What about the layer, the individual layer? I already know about clipping mask. I already use it. Oh well. Looks like I need to transform the image. No, that's not how you do it. Jeez. All right. let's see. Restore. The story that I'm making right now, girls gets her power is physical power, but they mainly depend on the maiden's power, but the demigod. You're trying to you're trying to create a paper scissors rock scenario. Just go ahead and make it. Then reread it and read it to somebody else. See if it's entertaining or good. Just make the story, get it out of your system, and like start revising it. That is the best advice I can give you. Because everything that you're going to be like, everything that you're going to be about or about trying to do or accomplish in that story that you're trying to make is it's going to be your flavor. It's going to be your thing. Because I know if I get in there and give you my input before anything is done, it's just going to make the situation worse. So just make the whole thing first, and we can correct the whole thing from there. Because it might, because what you're telling me is you're thinking about this and that, which is which is cool, which is okay. That's all right. You're thinking, you're making everything happen in your story. But what I was getting at is, uh, write the whole thing out first before you revise everything. I'm gonna lock those two layers. That's fine. And changing color. There we go. Because I want to bring her forehead down some, but also want to make her head rounded some more. Because no skull is going to be completely like that from the get go. And I can worry about giving her some dominant brows by changing the angle a little bit. Same thing over here. Well, that angle was already changed. Now, probably should give her more space for the eyes. But I'll just do this for right now. Her nose actually came out pretty good, so I'm going to keep it largely the same. No. Bring that back. The ears might be different when I get done with them. And the lips. There we go. And we have enough to start decent line work for this individual. Give her some good detail. Let's see what Mark says about line work.
Artist. And I know the other day you weren't happy with your drawing. Alright, today we're tackling exactly what you're gonna get. It's actually pretty easy to execute. You just gotta know how. Let's get right into it. Well. The 4 different things that I'm talking about here are line confidence, line thickness, line color, and line suggestion. Now, some of these might make some sense.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Come on.
Oh, hey, it's you again. I'm Mark, an art teacher, a professional artist, and I know the other day you weren't happy with your drawing, more specifically with your line art, and that's why in this week's tutorial I'm going to show you how to instantly improve your lines. Beginning of their art journey. So I'm guessing a lot of you had that question too. We're aiming for clean, professional looking lines. Who isn't? And if you follow the video, that's exactly what you're gonna get. It's actually pretty easy to execute. You just gotta know how. Let's get right into it. Well. The 4 different things that I'm talking about here are line confidence, line thickness, line color, and line suggestion. Now, some of these might make some sense already, but it all definitely needs a little bit more explaining. So let's get started with the first one here, line confidence. This one will probably be the quickest because it's the most obvious and the easier one to fix. But basically what we're trying to do is get rid of hairy lines. What are hairy lines? This is it. It's when instead of using a single brush stroke to trace a line, you use multiple ones.
Guilty.
Because of a lack of confidence, maybe your tablet's kind of bad and it's all jiggly when you do it, so you need to go like a little bit faster. Or more often than not, it's just a lack of dexterity, and that's something that you can practice. And one way to practice it, one way to be able to get those nice clean lines that look uninterrupted, you just gotta start using the Control Z more, or use your eraser a little bit more. I'm sure everybody will agree, you know, this looks nicer than these, and you can imagine an entire drawing done using those kinds of lines, shaky, hairy lines, versus one that's done like this. It's going to make a big difference. So this one, in my opinion, is the easiest one to fix, and also the one that will have the biggest impact on the overall quality of your line art. So yeah, the idea is just to practice using fewer and fewer lines. At the beginning, it's a little bit uncomfortable, especially if the confidence isn't there, but you just gotta fake it until you make it. Or in this case, always try to go confident, and if you make a mistake, Control Z, undo. Try again, undo, until you get it right. As you practice more and more, your use of Control Z will go down. You'll have to do it less often, and there's two quick tricks that you can try. One is to go faster. So instead of tracing slow lines, try to go a little faster. If you fail, no big deal, Control Z. And the other one, use your elbow. If you
I had several suggestions on this part. It was how to hold yourself, hold your pen, and all that. The difference between using your wrist and using your elbow and using your shoulder. And excuse me, a couple other practice stories. Hold on. I'm getting a phone call. Be right. All right. Sorry about that. It wasn't going to be long, but anyhow, the basically there are different techniques to use if you have the space to use them. But again, practice can help you improve as long as you know what you want to improve. So that's my argument there. Let's go ahead.
you use your wrist, I mean, you can use your wrist for small details, but for like big lines that need to be nice, long and precise, you know, like the curve here around the leg, this line here in front of the leg. The longer the line, the harder it is to do with just your wrist, because your range of motion is kind of limited, and also it's a little bit more shaky. So make it a habit to use your elbow a lot more, your entire arm, to draw your lines. Piece of
You hear that? Your entire arm. You can use your wrist for some things. You can use your elbow and basically your shoulder for a lot more lines. So it's something that I hit on before.
piece of cake. Moving on to line thickness. Oh boy, what do we have here? Alright, when it comes to line thickness, there's a little bit more to think about here compared to the other points, but the first thing would be for convergent lines. So whenever you have lines here that converge, or perpendicular lines, or lines like these, it's always really, really nice to fatten it up at the base here before it connects to the other line. Or if you have a bunch of lines going in the same direction like this, well, where they merge, same thing again, fatten up the lines just a little bit I think we can see the difference here pretty clearly. On one side here we have like boring straight lines, and on the other side here we have lines that have a lot more character. The next one will have to do with details. Usually you'll always want to use a finer lines for details and keep the bolder lines for your outlines. So here
Yeah, that's pretty good. I freaking lose track of what I'm supposed to be doing with a lot of my lines, especially with freaking material that sits on the body.
I think we have a good example. You know, the outline of this sphere here significantly thicker than what's on the inside, but as a result, we're able to read the details, you know, kind of nicely. Whereas the other example here, where everything is kind of the same thickness, the details on the inside, not as good. And here I think we get this example maybe a little bit more obvious when talking about the convergent lines. When we have like a skirt like this with fabric bunched up at the waist, and as those folds go down, they kind of disappear. It's definitely a lot harder to achieve a good look with lines of similar weight or similar thickness, but when you introduce thickness, you definitely get these nice expressive lines that really convey those folds better. So thickness when it comes to convergent lines, thickness when it comes to the details on the inside of a shape, more thickness when it comes to the outlines, and also we're going to have thickness based on the depth of what we're drawing. So if we take the same skirt here and we look at the thickness of, you know, those lines, they're pretty thick. But what happens if we push this skirt back in the scene closer and closer to the horizon, which is this line back there? Like everything else that gets closer to the horizon, it will seem like it's getting smaller and smaller. And well, guess what happens to the thickness of the line? It also gets smaller and smaller.
Did you
with
plug
distance.
up your
So if you
computer?
want something to look closer, make the outlines bolder. If you want something
Hey.
to look very, very far in the distance, make your outlines much finer. There's actually another case that you could use thickness for, and that would be to represent shadows. So of course we're not going to be shading anything in here, we're just focusing on the lines, but the line itself can suggest the presence or the absence of light. If we look at the same ball here, if I were to ask you where the light is coming from the top or from below, where would you guess? The top, right? Because that line is a little bit finer here, it suggests that there's more light coming from the top here, and the light is just eating away at our outline. But on the other side, on the opposite side, where the shadows would normally be, well, we can thicken up the line ever so slightly, and this way it kind of suggests a little bit of a 3D effect without actually using lights. So you'll see me do this in a few places here. So right under the tricep, for example, I'm suggesting a little bit of shadow there, you know, like compared to the line here for the trapezius. Definitely a lot thinner. So there you go. Point number 3, the color. Line color. So what do I mean by line color? Well, first is going to be just the intensity of the line, so the brightness of your line. And in this case, what we have to think about, the fundamental that we have to keep in mind is just going to be depth in your scene or perspective. So for example, if you're drawing a big scene and you have like a room with full of big balls like this, and you're trying to convey that this ball here, the one that seems to be behind the other ones, is further back in the scene, and that's something that you can do with the color of your line, the value of your line. So here with the same thickness, none of these feel that much closer, but if you
I'm gonna have to be trying the last two techniques where the line converge, broaden the thickness, and where the line is furthest away is the thinnest, and also use this technique for the coloring of the lines to showcase where the light is not only coming from, but showcase and dimension and distance. So that's pretty
brighten
good.
up your line as you go further back in your scene. Then what we get is a slight suggestion of atmospheric perspective, basically introducing a mass of particles between us, the viewer, and tint your lines just a little bit. Tint them the color of the thing that you're drawing. If it's skin, tint it the skin color. And now, moving on to the last point, line suggestion. Now this one I think is very obvious if we look at this example down here. What happens if you have soft edges like this, you know, like let's say this is like an ottoman or something like that, like a little chair. How do you present a curved surface and still indicate the volumes? Because if we don't have any lines like this, it's a little bit confusing what's going on in here. It could be many different things, but an easy way to give your shapes a little bit of volume is to suggest the volume with lines. In this case, just adding a couple of lines, past the curve where everything becomes straight again. Some other times it will be for like a fold, let's say you start with a nice bold, obvious fold, and then it kind of fades out. What do you do then? Well, you can do the same thing with the line, have it phase out, something like that. This is a really, really nice and kind of simple way that you can use to represent lines that are not as clear, a little bit fuzzier. Of course, you can use lines like this to suggest, shading, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're not tackling shading at all. It's really just the quality of your lines. And well, in this case, it's when you can't really use a line per se. What can you do? You can suggest the presence of a line. Once again, if we look at the difference, it's just a little bit more charming. Now I will say that this one is probably the hardest one to get right because it requires...
Alright, that tutorial was Mark Burnett. Again, he was from Blizzard Entertainment as one of the lead artists over there, or the lead artist over there at one point in time. Now, I love his stuff. I can't say anything bad about it, because after a point, he has a certain style and a certain aesthetic. I like it, but being a fan of that, it's harder to take anything apart. Not that I'm hardcore or like his personal cheerleader or anything like that. Nothing of the sort. I'm just a regular dude that recognizes somebody else have talent, and it's something that I want to achieve and want to learn for myself so that I can do the things that I like to do. Now, he's right about his lines, and something that I'm gonna need to freaking decompress about later. But for the most part, I'm gonna continue trying this exercise tomorrow. There's a couple of things that I need to pay attention to now that I can't ignore due to the phone call. But however, I'm gonna be back on. Should be back on later tonight if everything goes well, in about 2 hours maybe, where I'm either going to be playing World of Warcraft or Project Ascension, or freaking the other Vanilla Plus. So just put OC 001 face Reeve. And what's going to happen is I'm going to tighten up on the techniques to make this picture look good. And again, you see the evolution from what we had here to what we have here. Using some of the same measurements as a guideline, peeling further and further away from what she has going on. But there's other things that I need to practice off screen to make this picture seem more relevant. So I'm gonna do it and take my time to look at some charts, graphs, and practicing on how to do things. and I'm gonna do it. Now, for the rest of you, take it easy and have a good one. 2 hours, I promise. 2 hours. I'll be right back.